Welcome back to the GMS Studios here, and we're at NSA Thrive, and I'm sitting here, brand new friend, Judy Krueger. Judy itself, we were talking to continuity in business, and I think it's extremely important that today's business professionals understand that whole level of continuity, okay? And we're going to bridge into another area of recovery, okay? Because there are individuals themselves, sometimes maybe the intentions are correct, but the execution is shy. Okay,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. So, Julie, let's start by how did you get into this area, all right, of digesting businesses, all right, from what they're facing?
Happy to. Thanks for having me. So, I've been working in the space of assisting businesses and organizations for 24 years now.
That's enough time.
Yeah. Um, so, my background is I'm an epidemiologist, started out working as at CDC,
Uh huh.
doing infectious disease outbreaks, traveling
I'm gonna
around
sit
for.
back a little bit. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, hey, my last response was COVID. But before that, Zika, Ebola, even 9/11, that was my first disaster that I went out on.
I just scared my crew. They're gone.
No white powder, it's okay. Um, and I learned during those first 20 years how it's really important to have processes and plans in place. Because if you don't have some kind of a procedure to follow through with,
Right.
then you just wallow in disarray and you really don't get to resolution quickly and
Right.
lives are at stake.
Sure.
Jumping into after I completed that, I started working doing business continuity, helping organizations mitigate events, large scale events, floods, fires, hurricanes.
Good deal.
Because if you don't think about safety first, you're not going to have the business.
Sure.
The lights won't turn on.
Right.
And, you got to look after your customers. You've got to look after your team,
Sure.
your staff.
So you're a disaster recovery specialist.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And I think today's business themselves in catastrophic times, all right, there is going to be some challenges, choices themselves they're going to have to make in order to either rebuild, all right, start new, and
That's
do
right.
things themselves, maybe perhaps do things differently. And that's your expertise. That's where you're coming in to help them mitigate that congestion. All righty. And so how do you do that? What's your
So,
typical type of client like?
first of all, looking at what plans they have in place. And if they don't, after reviewing them and building that plan for them, it's unique and novel to the organization at hand because all companies offer different
Sure,
services.
without a doubt.
hmm
Products and
hmm
different types of ways themselves they provide that level of service.
And now we need to think more about cybersecurity and
Sure,
other features. It's not just the physical security, it's things beyond.
sure.
And you've got mental health crises and other things that are happening. And that's the other angle, promoting resiliency among the workforce because they're suffering as well. There's a lot of chaos out there. There's a lot of misunderstanding as to how you see the world and how do you interact with the world? How do you interact with your team members?
Sure, exactly.
So there's just different aspects of being able to support
Yeah.
companies.
Business owners, entrepreneurs, corporate people, I would imagine human resource, right, and directions themselves out there because if there's in times of disaster, already, especially in crises, and I'm not going to even name the crises because I mean there's all sorts. You mentioned cybersecurity,
Yeah.
all right, and there's
Yeah.
a ton of folks out there really engaged in today's cybersecurity and what to watch out for. We've seen it on higher levels, but just like human resource and those individuals are going to get involved. But there's a lot of corporations and entrepreneurial people themselves. HR is probably the last thing on their radar. And so now they're going to have to do it themselves. So now you're working directly with those business owners to engage those folks themselves to reinitialize something that they didn't expect.
And I'm finding more and more it's the boards, it's those high stake leaders who are on boards who really need to instigate and promote this effort. Because people who are in HR,
Top down.
you got to work top
Right.
down. The people at the top, they don't realize where the holes are. The HR people are there to help support the policies they put in place, but they're not the ones who are going
The
to be able to.
leaders
The
themselves.
leaders are
Yeah.
the ones that really need to be the ones who are educated and informed. And so that's one of my main target
Yeah,
audiences
right.
is to work with those boards and provide them some direct assistance. Then they can work through their channels to implement the
Sure.
changes.
Here's the problem itself, I guess, with today's business themselves. Everything's JIT, just in time. All right. And then the fact itself is it's a cost versus, are we going to actually put this much into, all right, preventative when something couldn't happen? You can't predict it. All righty. It happens themselves when it happens. All righty. We see disaster recovery in many different forms and fashions. All
Yeah.
right. From hurricanes and sicknesses and different just things, floods, tsunamis. And there's,
Terrorism.
all right.
It's a
So
reality right
let's go to
now.
terrorism. It's a reality.
We have to think
and
about all those
yeah,
things. And see, that's just it. If you don't have all of the different components in your business continuity plan, well, then you're left without the SOP. You don't have a procedure to follow. Your staff doesn't know what to do. And you, as the leader, have to really take cues from somebody to help provide, put out the fire,
sure.
keep the lights
That
on.
SOP is going to be more important. That's standard operating procedures themselves.
Absolutely.
Military folks themselves, they have it. It's in place. It's part of their set of rules. Okay, but regular business and the continuity of business folks and corporate things themselves, that's probably the last thing to think about. About that. Preservation. Okay, of things themselves, because they're more worried about the bottom line. All right, sales, service, and everything else. So just the upper lines.
Right.
And and seeing those things themselves. Oh yeah, so when it happens, then we'll deal with it then. That's probably the worst time.
That's the worst time. We really need to put in place situations, mitigation plans before prevention of any kind of disease outbreak. Post COVID, look at that. Now we all have these different HR policies in place because we've learned the hard way.
Unfortunately, yeah. So we learn through experiences themselves that we never thought we would be involved in.
Yes.
And so how do you help these folks?
Sure. Well, over the past couple years, I was the first in and the last out for disaster
Good,
response.
superb.
Irma, Ian, Idalia, uh, Hurricane Helene, all of these different events. I was one of the responders, field responders, leading teams of people in the field and working with different local entities to help them to come together to work on implementing the different
Good, superb,
procedures
exactly.
post event. And really, it's just working by communicating, having team structures, and sharing information, and then following through.
What's the feedback then? Thank God you're here. All
Absolutely.
right.
How long you
Where,
staying?
what, yeah,
Don't go.
exactly.
Don't leave
We don't
us.
want you to leave. 3 squares a day. We'll take care. And and you may find yourself all over. But I think it's the preventative side, which I
Yes.
think is extremely important.
Especially now because the government's not going to be there to support you. All of the
And we
government,
saw that in the past.
correct.
We saw that in the Carolinas. We
Yeah.
saw it in other areas
Yeah.
themselves. And I'm not going to point fingers, all right, because I could, and that'll bring us to a whole different show. All righty. But I'm just thinking out there is that these individuals, they need to start thinking about these preventative measures. All right, just in case these things happen. Did any of these folks expect that type of devastation? No, they didn't.
Right.
And that we've interviewed and we've had conversations with many of those groups, and they said, if we only, what do you mean, if you only? You should have, okay? And so, how do you prep those individuals themselves going forward? All right, to saying, all right, these are the things themselves you need, and this is the factors involved, and these are the bits and pieces themselves to get you into that mode of thinking about just in case something happens. What's
Well,
that step?
and I think we learned a lot during COVID. The supply chain is necessary. It's not just the food and the water and the hand sanitizer and whatever it is. It's having a mitigation plan, but also helping to make sure your team, your staff, your relationships have been engaged regularly, and that people have the ability to remain robust, engaged for the long haul
Sure,
because
exactly.
it's not going to end. When the crisis happens, it's going to take weeks to be able to get out of
Sure,
the
it is, without a
situation.
doubt. And maybe months and maybe years. It depends upon the help.
Right.
Okay. And then there's long term effects, short term effects, and things of this nature, which you don't know until you don't know what you know until you know what you know,
Right.
and
Right.
that becomes, Judy, I think people themselves really need to reach out already and collect the information they need. I think you have very, very vital service already for individuals themselves, especially the speaking community here at NSA Thrive, all right, to know that there's a type of service out here, okay, from actually their clientele, all right, because they built a reliance, a reputation, all right. They built some continuity. All right, there it is. Continuity, all right, with
Yes.
those folks.
Yeah.
How do people reach you?
They can go to judykrueger.com
Okay,
and see my contact information.
good deal. Superb. Alrighty. And the name of your company?
Judy Krueger and
There you
Associates.
go. So, without a doubt, Judy, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you very much for coming in.
Thank
Alrighty.
you.
And I think, like I say, these folks themselves for preventative, I think everybody needs to know this. Alrighty. And if you don't know anything about it, I think I may know somebody, okay, that can help you through the process. Judy, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. It's been an honor. Pleasure. Thank you. All right, GMS, we're almost out. All right. We're out for this session. All right. Judy, thank you very much. Super. We'll see you soon.